out on the bus. And then when I got transferred, when I got to R&R at the new place,
He was there?
No, he was driving. He was a sergeant on the bus. He told the lieutenant in R&R, he says, if you need a real plumber, he says, that's your guy. But anyhow, I don't see him again for a long time, and he makes lieutenant when I hit Donovan. And you're talking about clothes?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was over the visiting room.
Mm.
And these people come in and he made them go out and change, right? And then a couple hours later, another set of people come in and they called the warden because, and then the lieutenant or captain called him and told him to let him in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And he told the captain,
no.
yeah, but not in that way, but he told him no.
Right.
He said, I cannot send another family out
Right.
and let this one in. He says, if you
Hands over there. Mm-hmm.
if you want them in,
Mm-hmm. Then,
you bring them in.
right. You go get them.
But that man, he didn't care if you was in blue or green.
Hmm.
You were right or you were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's a rare quality. That's a rare quality anywhere, right?
anyhow, when I went to Donovan,
Mm-hmm.
I go in, they made me Mercy plumber like they always do. And they kept the tools in the watch office. And I go in there and I seen Smith and he seen me. And he said, come on in my office. So I walk in there. You know, he's got clerks out there and everything. He said, shut the door. And I looked at him and just smiled. And I said, Smith, how long have you known me? He says, for a long time. He said, have you ever seen me shut the door?
Uh-oh.
He said, well, this is a punk joint. I said, I don't give a shit what it is. I ain't shutting that door and talking to you. But do you know that man? Every time I went to board in that institution, he wrote a chronicle to the board, and he always started it off the same way. He says, I do not have the right to tell you or ask you to release this man. He says, but I can tell you the difference from when I knew him in Postal
Until now.
until now.
Right.
He says, it's night and day.
Okay.
But he wrote them chronicles at his house,
Mm-hmm.
and he turned them in, and one time he walked it right to the board because he forgot about it.
See.
And
that's the humanity.
right, but you don't find guards like that.
No. It was a rarity to find someone who maintained a heart. I met a corrections officer, and she had actually, she was in charge of the dorm. Or that was her post when she was there during the day. And she said to me one time, she said, because we were trying to work out something with an inmate, and she said to me that she was glad that she had not only been a corrections officer, that she had had another life outside of being a corrections officer.
It makes a difference.
Because her mentality and the way that she felt about what she was doing was totally different. The only being a corrections officer, she said, made them jaded, and they only had one view, and it just made, and she also said they were miserable.
Yeah, that was their life.
They were miserable people, though, is what her complaint was. They're not happy. They don't have anything outside of this, and even when they leave, they're unhappy.
Yeah, but their whole life is built around that prison and in the mentality of the prison.
Yes, yes.
You know?
Yes, and I guess if you think about it, prisons are built in remote locations, and so they probably are the economic engine in the areas where they are.
They are.
And so because it's the economic engine, there's a level of, what do I want to call it? The word I'm trying to say is deference and respect and admiration and everything, because it's feeding everybody.
Yeah.
So there's this level of, the prison is all good, even though the criminal activity whereby corrections officers send their kids to college. When we talked last week about them making sure that they keep the staff limited so that the staff can get overtime,
Yep.
so that they're making more money than what the salaries are, despite the fact that,
They start off with 50,000 a year.
right, just with a high school diploma. And most people can't make that kind of money coming out of high school. But another thing that I talked about in this first paragraph is talking about all of the different accounts that you have to have. A JPay, that's so you can put money on somebody's books. Global Tel Link, the biggest racket. Could I just have, I don't even know, I would love to have stock in Global Tel.
No, do you know that you remember when they cut visiting out for family visiting for lifers?
Okay, I do not, because
Yeah,
thankfully I
but
wasn't
anyhow,
there.
they did that in the whole system.
Okay,
And they had a meeting about it. And they told, a lot of wives came. And they told them, well, statewide, it costs over $2 million to staff the one officer that was over family visits. And one wife got up and said, how much do you get from the phones? And they said that overall, they got something like $30 million kickback from the phone company. And they said, well, why don't you take
some of that.
the $2 million off that? And the first thing out of their mouth, oh no, that money's slated.
It's already set
But
aside for something.
that was their money. The family outside was paying that phone bill.
And the tragedy of that is, there are studies, they already know that if you keep a person separated from their family, the more isolated they are in the penitentiary, the more likely they are to come back to prison once they get out of prison. In addition to the fact that the system creates poverty by pulling the breadwinners out of families and out of communities. And you pull those people out of the system, and all of a sudden, now you're telling them, you're charging them. At one point, the company was charging, was charging 4 times more than an international collect call.
Yep.
For a collect call from a prison in the state of California. And the regional congregations for neighborhood organizations, Los Angeles metropolitan churches, there was UAMIC down in San Diego. I know there was an organization in Northern California. They formed a collective and fought with the state of California to have the contract canceled with that company, because they knew that these people are the poorest people, and you're charging them 4 times more for an international than you would an international collect call.
A lot of people lost their phones.
Absolutely, yes.
They tried to put it in their kid's name. They tried to do this and that.
And think about the long-term effect of that. When you talk about that, putting people resorting to putting the phone bill in a child's name,
Yeah.
just to keep the phone on, because I've ruined my credit. Because again, I'm not doing this because I'm a criminal. I'm doing this because I have a loved one that I want to talk to, that needs to be able to talk to me.
You know what a lockup box is?
No.
Inside, everybody, at least back between the 80s and 90s, when they go to the canteen, they would put stuff in a box that they wouldn't touch. Because when they locked down, they couldn't get to the store.
Okay.
So it's called a lockup box.
Got you.
We knew of 4 times a year automatically. That's without a riot, that's without a stabbing, a killing, or whatever. We were gonna be locked down for a week to 2 weeks.
Why?
Yeah, for what?
That's for the officers, for their Christmas money, to buy their kids gifts.
Oh, wow.
And
Because they have to bring in additional staff, and they make overtime when you're
no,
on lockdown.
they just make overtime.
Overtime, got you.
Right. But we knew the holidays, and we knew we was gonna be locked down.
And so,
Because they went to this group and said, that group says you're punks and rats, and
created chaos so that they could then
yeah,
stir something up so that, okay, so from my experience being on the street, having done hardcore gang intervention in Los Angeles, where
they start half of the shit in the
they
prison.
do, well, they start a lot of stuff on the street too, and that's what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah.
One of the things in doing hardcore intervention that I learned was that officers, you can talk to any gang members in any gang, particularly in the 80s and 90s, where they would take a gang member from one community that they knew and drop him off in a rival gang's territory. I have experienced someone coming to me and say, or stopping someone in a projects and saying, "Where are you going?" "Oh, we mounting up," because it even sounds silly for me to even say it, because the police told us that them people over there said they was coming over here to kill up all the women and children. So I said, before you go, let me ask you this. Have you ever decided to hit a lick and you went and told the police before you